The storm began as a whisper, a faint, mournful wail in the distance that grew louder with each passing hour. By the time the five friends realized the severity of the blizzard, they were already deep in the winding forest roads of Montana. The GPS had lost its signal hours ago, leaving them to navigate the unlit, snow-choked paths with only their wits and the failing headlights of their beat-up SUV. The air outside seemed alive, howling and clawing at the windows. The vehicle struggled against the mounting snow, its tires slipping and groaning with every turn. Visibility was reduced to a few feet, and the thick wall of white rendered the world silent and isolated. Then, as if by some cruel twist of fate, the headlights illuminated salvation, a cabin. It sat nestled between gnarled trees, its rough wooden exterior battered by the storm. Smoke coiled lazily from the chimney, a beacon of warmth in the freezing night. Desperation outweighed hesitation. Shivering, the group piled out of the car, dragging their belongings through knee-deep snow. Mia, the most practical of the group, reached the door first and knocked. The sound was swallowed by the wind, but the door creaked open at her touch. Inside, the cabin was eerily quiet, the air heavy with the smell of wood smoke and something metallic. A weak fire sputtered in the stone fireplace, casting flickering shadows across the walls. On the dining table, mismatched plates and cups were arranged as if an unseen host had prepared for guests. "This is weird," muttered Jake, always the skeptic, "but it's better than freezing out there." The others agreed, unpacking their bags and huddling around the fire. Yet the unease was palpable. The cabin felt lived in, but there was no sign of its occupants. The walls were adorned with old photographs, unsmiling faces in faded black and white. The shadows from the fire seemed to make their eyes move, watching the group with silent intensity. As the hours stretched on, the storm's fury only grew. The windows rattled, and icy drafts snuck through unseen cracks in the wood. Despite the fire's warmth, the group felt chilled to the bone. Strange noises began to permeate the cabin. At first, it was the soft creak of floorboards, dismissed as the house settling. Then came the whispers, faint, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to emanate from the walls. "Did anyone else hear that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I'm sure it's just the wind," Jake said, though his voice betrayed his unease. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. She glanced at the photographs again. Were the faces closer now? Later that night, Mia woke abruptly. The fire had burned low, and the room was bathed in shadow. She felt a prickle of unease, the kind that made her skin crawl. Something drew her gaze to the frost-covered window. There, staring in, was a face. It was pale and gaunt, its hollow eyes unblinking. She screamed, jolting the others awake. Jake grabbed a flashlight and aimed it at the window, but the face had vanished, leaving only frost and darkness. "We need to leave," Mia insisted, her voice shaking. But the storm had transformed their salvation into a prison. The SUV was buried under several feet of snow, and the unrelenting blizzard made any attempt to leave suicidal. In the morning, desperate for help, they ventured into the snow. Behind the cabin, they discovered a barn, its doors swinging open in the wind. Inside, the stench of decay was overwhelming. Suspended from the rafters were carcasses, animals, and horrifyingly human remains. The flesh was stripped in places, and the hollow eyes seemed to accuse them. The group staggered back to the cabin, now fully aware that they weren't alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the storm seemed to grow angrier. The howling wind punctuated by heavy footsteps on the porch. The door buckled under a sudden, forceful impact, and then it splintered. A man stepped inside, his face hidden by a grotesque leather mask stitched together with crude precision. In his hands, he wielded a rusted axe, his intent clear. Chaos erupted. Sarah screamed as the group scattered. Jake lunged at the intruder with a chair, only to be overpowered. Blood splattered the walls. More figures emerged from the storm. A grotesque family, each masked and armed. They moved with terrifying coordination, their guttural laughter reverberating in the night. Mia and Jake managed to escape through a broken window, running blindly into the blizzard. The others weren't so lucky. The sounds of screams and breaking bones followed them into the snow. They stumbled upon an old shed and barricaded themselves inside. The walls were thin, and the cold seeped in, but it was their only refuge. Outside, they heard the crunch of footsteps and the low, menacing chuckle of their pursuers. A spear jabbed through a gap in the wall, missing Jake by inches. Spear jabbed through a gap in the wall, missing Jake by inches. "They're toying with us," Mia whispered, tears streaming down her face. When morning finally came, the family vanished into the storm, their silhouettes fading like phantoms. Mia and Jake ventured out, battered and frostbitten. They found a road and flagged down a snowplow, their ordeal finally over. A search party found the cabin days later, but it was empty. The photographs inside had changed, now featuring the group, their faces frozen in terror. Mia and Jake moved far apart, unable to face the nightmares that plagued them. But every winter Mia swore she saw a face in her window, pale, unblinking, and waiting, and the storm always followed.